Welcome along to the Gary Neville Podcast, which is taking place today at Old Trafford while the Manchester United players are doing their lap of honour. And Gary, we've just heard Michael Carrick's speech, and he referenced the fact that, in a way, the game that we've seen today sums up this place, that little bit of drama, Manchester United's fate not always seemingly in their own hands. It was kind of typical of the good traditions of the club.
Yeah, and I think since he's come back to the club, going to the four at the back, the two in midfield, and then obviously a number 10 dropping in off a striker and the two wide players, that it has felt a lot more like Manchester United. In fact, it has felt very much like Manchester United. We know it's not quite at the level that will win a league, but what you can see are the patterns of something that looks like the football club should be playing. And for the first 5 months of the season, that wasn't the case. It was desperate out here, and did the interview with Sky Sports News before the game with Dan Kahn, and we talked about, I think I did 6 games here or 5 games here in December and January, and we were doing interviews before the game talking about, Manchester United had an opportunity to go into the Champions League places, but they never seemed to take it, and it was really desperate around that time, and the football was hard to watch because it didn't represent what you think should exist here. And that second half was very much what you would see at Old Trafford. A Manchester United team who looked very dangerous going forward, are willing to go punch for punch. They conceded some chances and goals actually at the other end of the pitch, but always looked the more likely to score. Missed, Brian Mbeumo missed, I think, 4 himself. So, yeah, very much, I think, in the traditions of United, and I think that's why Michael Carrick will get the job. Obviously, the results, getting into the Champions League, but also, I think, just returning the club to a style which looks something like, and that's not always been the case. That's not easy. They will have to get better in a lot of areas. But there's been massive improvement in this last 4 months, and Michael Carrick's done an exceptional job. The players have responded to it. They've got themselves into a comfortable position in third place, which, would have been unthinkable in November and December.
He didn't confirm that he is going to get the job, but we believe that he's going to have a 2-year contract. How do you think he'll approach the challenge next season of the extra games? Because the Champions League that he's qualified for is now going to bring a minimum of 8, and obviously they hope it'll be much more than that.
Yeah, the only thing that's going to be able to help him with that is the increase in numbers and increase in quality in the players in the squad. Because there's no doubt that this squad will come under great stress playing 3 times a week. We know there are some players out there who are injury prone, some players out there who would fatigue more, and it's just inevitable. You've seen what City and Arsenal have done in this last 3 or 4 years. Liverpool as well, when they've obviously been challenging for Champions Leagues and titles, and what Manchester United have done historically. Sir Alex Ferguson brought 4 strikers here before anybody had heard of rotation and swapping strikers around, because he knew he needed, it wasn't quite 2 for the league and 2 for the midweek games in the Champions League, but it became a symbol of what that squad was, that you could have any of the 2 strikers on the pitch at any point, and you didn't know which 2 strikers were going to be on the pitch at the start of the game and at the end of the game, but they all rotated to a point whereby there was a freshness. And Michael Carrick's got at the moment a squad that is paper thin, really, in respect of if 2 or 3 players got injured, it would fall apart quite quickly and the results would start to decrease. So yeah, he must be really happy tonight, happy that he's going to get a 2-year contract. He deserves it. But a warning sign, and I don't think that, to be fair, we need to give Michael Carrick a warning sign. He'll know that himself, that there's going to be an added scrutiny and stress next season when he starts for real, and he'll need 4 or 5 more players minimum of really high quality that are reliable, consistent, and also have got, I think, they're Premier League ready. Whether that means they've played in the Premier League before, but they're ready physically to adapt to what's going to go out in this league. So yeah, a lot of work to do, but he's done a great job, and, so I say, has earned the position. I've always been one that said that I thought that Manchester United should go and get the best manager that they possibly can in the world. But what you can't deny over the last few weeks and months is that the call for Michael Carrick to be manager has been getting louder and louder, and it's difficult to go against it when it doesn't seem that there is an obvious sort of what will be candidate out there that you can just lift off the shelf and put in. So yeah, we're going to see Michael Carrick definitely at the start of next season, but the job starts really for him then. He's done a very, very good job as a sort of interim manager, caretaker, whatever you would call it. But he's going to start being sort of judged, I would imagine, at the start of next season. But he needs to get 4 or 5 players in. That means the club need to support him in getting the 4 or 5 players in that he needs.
2 of the holes that he will have to fill. Casemiro, we already knew this was going to be his last season, and he did confirm in his speech at the end here today that Tyrell Malacia is leaving. Now, obviously he, as things stand, would only be a cover player for Luke Shaw, but bearing in mind his history of injuries, even though he's had a great year for appearances this season with the extra stresses and strains of more games next season, is that an area where they will also need to bring in somebody ready-made?
They definitely need backup at full-back. Both sides, I would say. In an ideal world, you bring 3 defenders in an ideal world. And one of those defenders might be... When I think of the likes of, say, I'm trying to think in Cape at Arsenal, who plays left-back and left centre-back, and I think Ben White's done that as well, and I think Mosquera's done that, where they played... they almost need one of them that can play in 2 positions, that can support. Then they need another top centre-back, and then they do need a left-back. So I think 3 defenders would be perfect. A centre-back who can play centre-back and right-back, a centre-back who's top-notch, who can really be a sort of figurehead, and then a left-back to back up Luke Shaw, so that actually they can alternate between sort of what would be Premier League and Champions League and whatever the most important matches are of that time. You've obviously got the other domestic cups as well. And then they need 2 midfield players. That, in an ideal world, you'd think that 5 would be perfect. And if you're being really greedy, you'd then swap out maybe Mason Mount for another forward of some kind. Maybe someone like Mason Mount, because you've got to think about the fact that Bruno is someone who's difficult to replace. And Mason Mount sort of half does that a little bit. So maybe it would be him, but if it wasn't him, then maybe somebody else who can play in wide areas and sort of... You see these players exist, don't you, quite a bit now, the likes of Foden and Palmer and Cherky at other clubs that play sort of sometimes as a number 10, sometimes they play wide. We've seen Saka play more central and then he goes out to the right, plays left as well. So almost like a flexible forward that can play in that number 10 role if Bruno Fernandes is not there for any reason, and then basically someone else. So that to me, look, I'm asking for 6 players there, and I don't think I'm being greedy. It's just how much these players cost. How smart can Manchester United be? The absolute unequivocals are a top centre-back, 2 top central midfield players. They're the absolute unequivocals. They need 2 in central midfield and they need a top centre-back, in my opinion. But they've got to go and get, I think, 2 or 3 more around that to beef up the squad to enable themselves to compete and give Michael Carrick the best chance of being able to repeat the performance that he's had without the Champions League games and the interference of cup competitions this season.
So how would you sum up Casemiro's contribution now that we've seen his last appearance at Old Trafford, and how much do you think Kobbie Mainoo has benefited from that latter half of this season where he's been playing alongside him?
I mean, it'd be one of the great questions, really. Was Casemiro a good signing, a value for money signing? There's no doubt he's given his all. He did lose his way a bit, by the way, for a period of a year or so in the middle, where he looked like he'd put some weight on. He was immobile. Jamie Carragher's famous comment in that Liverpool game out here, and it was a harsh comment, but what we were seeing, I mean, he was subbed after 30 odd minutes. It was a real struggle for him, and he looked really heavy. He came back, was it last season, just completely different. His physicality was different. He'd lost weight. He was more sort of energetic, and his last 2 years he's been a really good performer for United, one of the standout performers, and in this last 6 months he's been exceptional in terms of getting Manchester United into the Champions League. His heading and his aerial ability in both boxes will be very difficult to replace. And you watch him now and you think, what would he have been like 10 years ago at Madrid? I wasn't watching Madrid 10 years ago week in, week out. I was watching them obviously in the Champions League, and you knew he was a top player, one of the very best. But he must have been exceptional 10 years ago. What they do now need is Manchester United is a 25, 26-year-old version of Casemiro. But the problem is that costs you 100 million quid nowadays. You're talking about a Declan Rice and a Casado, that type of player. So where that player comes from, Elliot Anderson, we've seen it here today, maybe we'll analyse him shortly. But overall, Casemiro's cost the club about £140 million. He was signed in a panic after a Brentford defeat away from home with Anthony. and they overpaid on Salah. The story goes that he couldn't believe the package that was being offered to him, and Real Madrid presented it to him as if to say, we can't hold you back. So it tells you that it's a moment in time, and Manchester United, I don't think today, in their current format and sort of leadership, would sign Casemiro as they won't go and do another deal like that. But that's to take nothing away from Casemiro, because I think he's performed in the last 12 to 18 months very, very well. I say there was a period in the middle of his contract where he struggled, and they will miss him. They'll miss him from a personality and character perspective, and a physicality and an aerial presence. And he's good on the ball as well, and he's developed a really good combination and partnership with Casemiro. So they need to find a couple of players in there, one standout player, but another one who can play in there if Manu or whoever they sign isn't available. You need at least 3 in there, maybe 4. So, yeah, it's a big send-off for him. He's become a fan's favourite. But I've still got in the back of my mind a reminder of the panic in which they signed him. Manchester United, I think, lost to Brentford. They lost at home the first game of the season to someone and then lost away at Brentford. And it was just panic stations before a Monday night football against Liverpool, where they spent 150 million on Antony and Casemiro. And no one could believe it at the time and thought it was madness. Casemiro, in the end, I think has brought some value. Antony's obviously gone. But Casemiro's brought some value just because of he's like a captain, really. You don't find very many players like that. But it still smacks of a time that was very different. And Manchester United need a younger version of him if they can find that player out there, which is difficult.
It is difficult. Would they perhaps look to the Premier League? I mean, you've mentioned Elliot Anderson already. I'll ask you what you thought about seeing him. But are you looking at his type, or an Adam Wharton maybe, who's had a little bit of European experience as well? Somebody from already within the division who can develop?
If you look at United's recruitment last summer, they did sign Šeško and Lamens that came from outside, but younger players who've got some growth. But their big signings were 2 players who are Premier League ready, Mbeumo and Cunha, and they've had difficult times at moments this season, Cunha and Mbeumo, but I've never thought for one second when I watch them that they don't belong in a red shirt. They do belong in a red shirt because they keep going. They've got that fight and that persistence. And Manchester United forwards have to work hard. They have to look like they're hungry to get on the ball. They have to look like they're going to run forward, like they want to score. And they're persistent and they keep going. And they've got good characters, those 2. And I think there's better to come from them as they settle into the second season. So Manchester United, I think, do need to look at players that are either very, very young and got a hunger to sort of grow, or Premier League ready players. And Elliot Anderson is that. What I like about Anderson is the fact that he looks forward, he contributes. I mean, you've seen the 2 assists that he's put in, the 2 crosses for the goals were exceptional. I've got a soft spot for him because I watched him for Bristol Rovers play against Salford a number of years ago when he was on loan. And he was playing in a wide area at that point, which he did for Newcastle sometimes, which means that when he goes back into central midfield, he can accept the ball on the half turn. He knows where he is. He's got an eye for looking forward, and I see too many, I mentioned it during the game, crabs playing central midfield. Can't have too many people who play 5-yard passes back and sideways. You might as well put a full-back in there if you're going to do that. You need to put players in there who are going to look forward and punch passes through the lines and have got their head up and can switch play, and Elliot Anderson can do that. He can take set pieces. So for me, he would be an outstanding sort of what would be candidate to come here, but you believe what you hear, Manchester City also want him. So if it's a straight fight between the 2 Manchester clubs, it'll be interesting to see who he chooses. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Manchester City are ahead of Manchester United. They've got Pep Guardiola. This season is going to be a successful season for Manchester City, irrespective of whether they win the league or not, because they've won 2 domestic cup competitions. And I would class that as a success, not by the standards that Pep Guardiola has set, but when you're transitioning a team as he is, from a team that won the treble and that's got a little bit old to a new team that's younger, to keep on winning trophies takes some doing. So for me, it's whether Elliot Anderson wants to try and... If you can be part of a winning Manchester United team again that win the league, the explosion here is enormous. This is a place that will just literally go like that. And it's whether he feels that he wants to be part of that type of project, or one that's at this moment more reliable and consistent and performing at a higher level. I think Manchester United have got a spark, they've got something magic about the club, and I'll never change my mind on that. But Manchester City right now have got performance. and they've got victories and they've got trophies coming in, year out. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And that's not to mention the fact that you've got to try and get him off Mr. Marinakis, which will be tough, I would imagine.
Yeah, it won't be an easy bargain to strike that one. Let's talk about a player who has been a leader really through difficult periods here at Manchester United, because he has equalled the record for Premier League assists today. Bruno Fernandes, he's picked up a load of individual awards in terms of Footballer of the Year awards as well. How much do you think that assists record will mean to him?
Oh, I think it'll mean an enormous amount, because look, when I played, I never ever looked at individual awards for the other players that won them, not for myself. But for the other players that won them in the team, I just didn't care about them at all. And I was named in the PFA Team of the Year quite a lot, and it meant nothing to me at all, honestly. It really didn't. I genuinely just wanted to win football games and trophies for the club. But Cristiano Ronaldo did want to win individual trophies. There were lads in the team who it was important to them to get recognition for their work. And so maybe as I get to sort of a lot older in life and I look upon sort of, people do look back upon individual achievements, and they do look back upon the fact that you've achieved something a little bit different. And then getting level with Kevin De Bruyne and Thierry Henry is something that bit different. And he could go ahead of them next week in the game against Brighton. We don't know yet. But he's been an exceptional performer. I've said this, unfortunately, for Manchester United for 2, 3, 4 years. He's the only player that I've seen signed for biggish money that I've seen go on and do sort of what will be that over the last 10 to 12 years. Now, I have to say Lahrmann's, and there's a couple now playing with Cunha and Mbeumo that maybe could provide that second and third and fourth. But a lot of the signings, the big signings that United have made, have really disappointed and fallen well short of the standards that you expected when they signed for the club. You get up for a lot of signings and thinking, oh, this is going to be a great signing, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't work for whatever reason. But he has been so consistent, and the position he's in now, in that off the front position, off a front player with the two behind, is perfect for him, because it allows him to cheat in the games, which is what he needs to do. Manchester United need to sort of, okay, he can defend, he certainly can press and try and harass, but you want him to be on the ball all the time on the counter-attack, and you want him to be on the ball in the final third, because he makes things happen. He's got such unbelievable quality, and he's got I said before about persistence, and it's so important. It sounds like something that's quite small, persistence, but the ability to continue to keep going for that pass that makes the difference, or that dribble that makes the difference, or that shot that makes the difference, is something that's absolutely categoric here at this club, and particularly in that number 10 role. I actually wish he was wearing the number 7 shirt. I think he's actually someone who is worthy of wearing that number 7 shirt. You think of Cantona and Robson and George Best and David Beckham and sort of the great players that have worn that shirt. And I know he's got number 8 on. I'm not asking him to switch, but he feels that he's got that presence, those shoulders up, that chest out. And yeah, and he deserves everything that he gets. There was a period where I think that he was, body language-wise, not demonstrating what I believe are positive traits for a captain. And this was 3 or 4 years ago. I think young players don't respond off that type of thing. They want that sort of, yeah, you can have a go at them, by the way. You should have a go at them, but not in a moany, whingy way. That seems to have gone from his game now. And what you can never doubt with Bruno Fernandes is he cares, and he's always cared, and he's always been passionate. So it's important that Manchester United keep him, by the way. He's got a buyout clause in his contract, and I think that he'll be looking at the club and speaking to Michael Carrick and saying, right, come on, who are you signing? Who are you going to sign that's going to take me to a point whereby I'm staying here? I believe in this club. I believed in this club last summer, when not many people at that time did believe in it, when Manchester United had just been beaten by Tottenham in the Europa League and finished 15th in the league, which is unforgivable. He stayed and could have easily jumped ship, and he didn't do. And that will put him in a really good position with United fans, because they demand loyalty, they want loyalty, and he's given them that. But now I think it's time for the club to really repay that loyalty. And that's, to me, buying fantastic players and bringing fantastic players in who can go alongside him, who can get Manchester United closer. I think they're about 11 points behind Arsenal right now, and that's going to be even more difficult to maintain next season because of the Champions League. But how do they close that 11-point gap? May become 14 tomorrow night. So how do you close a 14, 15-point gap? That means you've got to sign very, very good players, because Arsenal are a strong team and City are a strong team.
Just on the point of assists, we never used to talk about assists in terms of tallies. It was always goals. Is there a danger that in pursuing that actual record next week that you are caught in two minds if you're presented with the chance and you're thinking, should I lay it off to get the record? Should I go for goal myself?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he should go for the assist record next weekend. Manchester United need to win a football match, obviously, because there are fans going paying to watch the game and will spend a lot of money to get to Brighton. But if he can get an assist next week, he should try and do it. I mean, if he's got an obvious tap in, he shouldn't stop it and try and pass it to someone. He should take the goal. But yeah, I think he's worthy and well within his rights to go for that assist. And you're right. I mean, a number of things have changed. I never played as a defender at United as a right back and felt under any expectation whatsoever to get goals or assists. And I look now at some of the achievements of fullbacks and their goals and assists, and I feel embarrassed. But it just wasn't an expectation back then. Assists weren't something. I mean, I played behind David Beckham and Cristiano Ronaldo, who made assists all the time, and it wasn't really sort of ever. I don't even know in any season that I ever even looked at an assist leaderboard. I don't think it was ever presented to us. And now we get presented with a lot of stats and a lot of data, which is fair. But yeah, it's become something that's a lot more apparent and a lot more in our faces in the last 5, 6 years, 7 years. And is it a good thing? Assists. I do think actually Thierry Henry spoke about assists quite a lot and how important they were, that he felt they were as important as a goal and looking after his teammates. But yeah, historically, strikers were generally more selfish and thought more about goals, solely about goals, not about any way of setting up their teammates, even though I'm sure that they all contributed together. But yeah, it's become a new phenomenon and something that I can see the importance of it. Some of them are a bit basic. I mean, I've got an assist, believe it or not, because they must have recounted. I've got an assist. Scholes, he scored a goal, I think Middlesbrough away, which is one of the best goals you'll ever see. It's a strike from 30 yards. I roll it to him from right back, and I get an assist for it.
How many yards?
It's about 25 yards out. I'm probably rolling it to him sort of across.
Now, how many yards for your assist?
Oh, my assist was about 15 yards, 20. But it's a simple pass. I mean, it wasn't marked, and I get an assist for that. And I'm like the Elliot Anderson one in that second half where he whips that cross in. That's a proper assist. That's like, we should grade assists because some of them are so basic.
Well, some of them are deflections.
I know, it's like mad. But yeah, I'm not wholly bought into it, but I do think that, to get the 20 assists, you can see the calibre of the player that's up there. It means you're an exceptional player.
Let's move the discussion away from Old Trafford and Manchester United now, because I want to bring up the subject of Chelsea, who have today appointed Xabi Alonso on a 4-year contract. But interestingly, as manager rather than head coach. Do you think that's a sea change that needed to be made?
Yeah, they've basically gone, there you go, Xabi. Have the keys to the club, have the keys to the safe. There's the recruitment room, there's the scouts, there's the medical department. On you go, mate, it's over to you. Or, probably more than likely, Xabi Alonso said, look, guys, if I'm going to come in and subject myself to what I may have to subject myself to here, there's a couple of things that I'll want. If you sack me within the first couple of years, you're going to pay me a fortune. If I'm going to come, that will be the first thing he'll have asked for. And the second thing he'll have asked for will be control. And they'll have been the two conditions. I don't want to make it out that Xabi Alonso is thinking about money when he comes to Chelsea, but I'm sure the two things that he would want is control and protection against being sacked. Control and protection. These are my conditions. If you're bringing me in, I've got to control that changing room. I've got to control what comes into that changing room. I've got to control who works with the players in that changing room. Simple as that. And the other thing is, if you sack me, by the way, because I lose 4 or 5 matches or 8 matches or 6 matches, you're going to have to pay for it, because I'm literally banking on you. This is his first big job in the Premier League, and I've got to succeed. And I've got to make sure that after what happened at Real Madrid, that I don't get 2 dud jobs on the trot. So I think he's come in, and I think he's probably placed some incredible demands. It looks like a good signing for Chelsea on paper in respect of how Xabi Alonso is thought of. Every manager is a risk. It means that Liverpool aren't signing him, which I think was potentially something that was, mentioned quite a lot. But for Chelsea, I think that they've got such inexperience in the club in every single department, and I've mentioned it so many times. They've got inexperience on the pitch. They're going to have to change their model. This strategy of signing young players under the age of 22, 23 with 8-year deals, that's great. No one's going to ever say that signing young players is a problem. But signing in totality young players and not having a spine of strength, of physicality, is a big mistake. So the first thing that I think he'll do, he'll want a goalkeeper, he'll want a centre-back, and he'll probably want a striker of experience. They have got some experience in central midfield. Lavia and Casado and Fernandes, depending on what happens with them. But they can keep those three together. They've got something in there. And then there's the young boy, Santos. Is it Santos? Yeah. They've got 4 good central midfield players. They've got a sprinkling of, like, what I call fizzy sort of drink, bees that move around on the wings. But they need a real top centre-forward. João Pedro's very good, by the way. I like him. Delap's young, but they need a top centre-forward of strength, of class. They need a centre-back or 2, and they definitely need a goalkeeper. And I think if they can get those 4 players right, and Xabi Alonso can attract 4 players, and they can spend a couple of £100 million and maybe recycle a bit out of the club as well, Chelsea can become a decent side very quickly. They just lack experience and physicality down the spine. And they need that togetherness and spirit in the dressing room, which I don't think is quite there either. But that could come together quite quickly under a new manager. So for me, it's interesting to see what happens. I'm happy he's come to the Premier League. I'm really intrigued and interested by talented managers coming to the Premier League. I think the Premier League is at its best when it's got the best managers in the world in the league. He is definitely someone who's put himself up there in the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm really interested to see. But it's no doubt that the owners and the sporting department have basically relinquished control of decision making, and they need to basically go all in. They've gone all in here, I would imagine, financially and from a control perspective.
So do you think it's a move away from idealism to realism in appointing Xabi Alonso, who had that spectacular start to his managerial career with the Leverkusen Invincibles, had his fingers burnt a little bit at Real Madrid. So if he's going into Chelsea now, he really has to stamp his authority on those players so he doesn't face a repeat situation.
Absolutely. I mean, go in there, control, protection against being fired early. It's going to cost them. It's going to be messy for them if they fire me. And basically be harsh, be ruthless. I always remember Pep coming in and getting rid of Joe Hart before he played a game. And Klopp coming in and getting rid of, is it Benteke, who was a sort of big signing for Liverpool, just got rid of them. They were big signings, didn't give them a chance. You don't fit what we want. I think Alonso has got to come in. It's changed my view in terms of sort of what would be that idea of loyalty and giving people an opportunity, and you wipe the slate clean. The usual thing from a manager when they used to walk in was, everyone's got a chance. Wipe the slate clean. What happened before? You haven't got that time now as a manager. You've got to assess what you want before you go in. Get rid of the stuff you don't want out of the changing room and take over from a position of authority, because you haven't got a year or 2 to be able to sort of assess the crop, if you like. You've got to go in and deal with it straight away. And
so the timing, do you think, is good from Xabi Alonso's point of view, because he's got a whole summer to do that now?
He's got a whole summer. He's probably been talking to the club for some time. They've probably got an idea straight away. He'll have watched every single match that they've played. He'll have watched the cup final yesterday. He'll see who he wants in the bus with him and who he doesn't want in the bus with him. And I think he'll be quite unequivocal with the people at Chelsea. Him, and him are gone. I want these players here on this side. And I always remember going and seeing Maurizio Pochettino early in his Tottenham career, and I spoke to him about it on an interview about 3 weeks ago. And I always remember him saying to me, these are the players that I want to keep, and these are the ones I need to get rid of in the next 6 months. Now, he, to be fair, at Tottenham needed to make sure that he got rid of them in a more efficient way that didn't lose the club money. So he had to try and play them to get rid of them, if you know what I mean. But he was quite clear. He was given time at Tottenham, obviously, Maurizio Pochettino. Xabi Alonso won't get time. We've seen that with other managers at Chelsea. So I think what he'll have said is, you need to make sure you basically do what I say. And that's why they're calling him manager. Manager, I think, is a very important word in modern football, because it's usually head coach. Every club would push towards now appointing a head coach and saying, look, we'll take care of sports science, medical, recruitment and other areas around the team, so that if you do go, you're the sort of what would be transient one, with you maybe 2 or 3 assistants, they'll go, but the rest of the club stays the same. I think Xabi Alonso has said, no, I will do what I want here and make sure that I'm in control of things. And he'll have that written in and I'm sure inked into his contract.
On a similar theme, but different club, do you think that Arne Slot's managerial authority has been undermined by Mo Salah's comments about going back to heavy metal football?
It's certainly been undermined publicly. I mean, it's a direct attack. I mean, Mo Salah is walking out of the door, and as he's just literally sort of about to get to the door and open it and walk out, he's pulled the pin out of a grenade and lobbed it back into the room. Because that from him. But what I would say is about Mo Salah's comments, you have a player of that ilk, of that stature, of that personality, you can never keep them quiet. They have power, they have control themselves, they have a fearlessness that means that they don't care what they say. Mo Salah will believe what he said is the right thing to say for the football club. But the pain that causes is deep for Arne Slot, for his staff, for the Liverpool executives. It does really hit hard, that one. Because he's a player that's loved by the fans. They're not going to change their opinion on him. He's achieved too much for the club. And there's this sort of question, I think you mentioned it before, do you think he'll play in the final game? He will play in the final game because he's done too much. The idea of sort of Liverpool looking petty and then now not playing him next week and sort of forbidding him his final farewell would cause the club serious damage. So they're going to have to suck on the lemon this week. They have to suck on the lemon this week, the Liverpool executives and the Liverpool manager. They'll have to bite the bottom lip, and they're going to have to put him in the team next week, clap him and thank him, and then just get to the end of the season. But that is a painful one, a comment like that. And I've been here when the comments like that have been said about Manchester United. I think Cristiano Ronaldo said something like that on the way out, didn't he, a few years ago when he did the interview with Piers Morgan. And it was painful, that, and I was quite critical of Cristiano at the time. Not necessarily of his meaning behind his words, because what he was saying was the training ground wasn't good enough, this wasn't good enough, that wasn't good enough. Well, we were all saying that. It was the fact that he's in the dressing room and his teammates were still playing literally a couple of hours before at Fulham. But you can never, ever hold back these types of sort of players. They stand on a different level, they're on a different planet when it comes to ability, and they don't always conform to team wishes, club wishes. It's a painful one for Liverpool. It's a club that's had a lot of plaudits over the last 5, 6, 7 years for being well run, for being disciplined, for being efficient. But their sporting department is taking a bit of a whack right now, and their manager's certainly taking, our coach is certainly taking a bit of a whack. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I really like Arne Slot. I think to win a league in his first season was an exceptional achievement. To get into the Champions League this year, which I believe he will do again, I think demonstrates that there's still an element of consistency against a lot of things that have gone wrong in the club in the last 12 months that have been out of their control. So I do believe he's worthy of another chance, but the more that you see from an external perspective of what the fans are thinking and what Mo Salah's saying, and I think there were 4 or 5 players liked his comment, weren't there?
So I believe, yeah. I'm not on social media myself.
They're the ones I'd be looking at if I was Arne Slot. The ones that are liking his comment.
Yeah.
I mean, Salah's leaving, but those 3 or 4 that are in there that have liked his comment are the ones that I'd be thinking, are they with me? And that's a real message to Liverpool's hierarchy and to their executive that, yeah, I don't know what it brings in the next week or 2.
It will have been an accidental touch, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's just flicking it as they were, just, sorry.
Anyway, it's a busy week ahead.
It won't be that. It was their representatives.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it won't be the players themselves that have been reading their social media.
True, the excuses are in already. Anyway, Gary, it's a busy week. You're moving on to Arsenal-Burnley, after which there'll be another bonus podcast. So I'll leave you to look forward to that, and we'll hear from you again after that.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you.